Jen. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Democrats are calling for the president to release barrels from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to bring down costs, and that would be somewhat of an immediate action to mitigate these high gas prices, as opposed to waiting for the BIF money to be implemented to address the long-term supply chain issues or the Build Back Better to be passed. Why has the president not yet done that? Does he plan to do that soon?
I don't have anything to preview for you. I can just reiterate what I conveyed a little bit earlier, is that certainly the cost of gas is on the mind of the president, as it is on the mind of many Americans across the country. And there are several steps we've taken, including pushing the FTC or asking the FTC to look into price gouging, something we've seen and we have concerns has been an issue over the past few months as the availability and supply of oil has gone up and prices have not come down, pushing OPEC to release more supply to meet the demand. And certainly there are a range of other domestic options, but I just don't have anything to preview at this point in time.
Can I get your response to this report from the Tax Policy Center that under the Build Back Better plan, most millionaires would get a tax cut. Two-thirds of people making over $1 million would get a cut on average of $16,800, mostly because of SALT. Separately, it finds that 20 to 30% of middle-class households will pay more in taxes. Granted, it's a small amount, between $100 and $230, depending on income levels. But how does the White House frame this reconciliation plan as a tax cut for the middle class paid for by the rich when this analysis is showing the opposite?
It actually doesn't. Just to give a little bit more context of what the report showed, it also showed that the average family with children making $75,000 to $100,000 per year will get an income tax cut of about $2,230. It also showed the average. It showed the average taxpayer with income above $1 million per year will see their income taxes go up by $65,000. 75% of the tax cuts go to families making less than $200,000 per year, with 54 million families making less than $200,000 a year getting a tax cut. What we also don't buy into, which is part of your second part of this, is that any tax that dares touch big corporations, many of whom are making record profits and not paying any taxes at all, is somehow a tax on the middle class. Most economists agree with us. Build Back Better will clearly lower taxes, lower costs, raise wages, and economic growth, increase economic growth for the middle class. The strategy, and just look at the 2017 tax cuts. That was argued at the time that giving tax cuts to big corporations would trickle down to lower income people. It didn't. None of that happened. So we're just not buying into that notion.
But doesn't that not take effect, that cut that you're referencing, until 2023? So I guess what I'm getting at is next year, 2022, expectation is that middle class families will be paying, granted, a little bit more, but still a little bit more if this passes. And then also, they're still dealing with issues like gas prices being high. You guys have talked about the actions you're going to take or are looking at, but these are long-term solutions mostly that you're talking about. So what will be done in the immediate future to address the next year?
Actually, many of them are short-term. But what is true and is not often out there is that a lot of these pandemic relief programs are ending. Right? Are ending. So if you look at the spending, I don't really have a graph right now, I'm kind of making a fake one, but if you look at the spending from pandemic relief, that is going to go down because a lot of those programs are ending. So when people are out there, this isn't your question, but it just made me think of it. When people are out there criticizing the influx of money into the economy, that's actually misleading and inaccurate. What we're really talking about here is we're ending those programs. The president supports that. There are programs, to your point, like the child tax credit, that if we don't extend the child tax credit, 40 million Americans will no longer get the benefit of the child tax credit. That's an immediate benefit that would be happening next year. I mentioned before, investing in housing and building lower income or available housing that allows for options for lower income and middle income families. That is something that will have an impact. Cutting childcare costs in half. That's something that will happen next year. Those are all ways that we are trying to and focused on lowering costs for Americans. That would be a part of this bill.
I want to ask you about real quick about Ukraine. I know you discussed earlier the Russian troops amassing on the Ukrainian border. Field hospitals, as we all know, started being set up in April, indicating that there might be some action there. Blinken's comments about concern about Russia rehashing the 2014 invasion, and then Jake Sullivan underscoring the commitment to Ukrainian sovereignty and territorial integrity. But it doesn't seem there's been any indication of more support on the way from the U.S. right now.
To the Ukrainians?
And then, so why is that? And then also, why did we send the CIA director to Russia instead of the Secretary of Defense or our ambassador or Blinken to handle this kind of a diplomacy issue? Like, who is he speaking for in that trip?
He's speaking for the U.S. government. I'd also note that the CIA director is also the former ambassador to Russia and the former deputy secretary of state. So he does come to it with quite a bit of experience. But the president looks at his national security team as a group of smart, engaged individuals who are representing his national interests overseas, and that's what he's doing. I will note on the Ukraine question, part of the reason I mentioned the engagement with European allies and partners is because, as you know, we operate in lockstep with our allies and partners. That's how we've approached things. We have a shared concern about reports of military buildup on the border. I don't have anything to preview at this point in time, but that is something that we are very actively engaged with, not just the Russians on and the Ukrainians, but also our European partners as well. I just want to skip around because I know we're not getting to enough people in the back, so I hear. Okay.